15 months to the day of this video going out, Leeds United parted company with Marcelo Bielsa, a manager who had taken on one of the fallen giants of European football, a club scarred by financial meltdown, multiple relegations, numerous owners and several disastrous managers, and transformed them into one of the continent's most watchable teams. His unique attacking style had set the blueprint for a side that had finished 13th in the Championship the season before he arrived, jumped up to 3rd in his first campaign, and were promoted as champions in his second. This, coupled with the close connection he fused between the players and the fans, meant that not only did Leeds get stuck firmly back on the football map, but also saw the club once again become a glimmering source of pride within the city and community it represents. But since he left Elland Road in February 2022, there hasn't been much for Leeds fans to be proud of. In that time, they have played 49 Premier League games and won just 11, staying up on the last day of the 21-22 season under Jesse Marsch and sacking both him and Javi Gracia since then. Now on their 4th manager since Bielsa, Leeds turned to Sam Allardyce with just 4 games of the season remaining in a desperate bid to escape relegation, a situation made all the more embarrassing by the fact the club's owner Andrea Radrizzani said at the start of the season it would be impossible for the side to get embroiled in a relegation dogfight so late in the campaign again. With the club's fan advisory board branding the season a humiliating disaster in a statement that demanded change in the dugout and recruitment department in April, the feeling around Elland Road is at its lowest for some years. But what has brought Leeds to this point? On today's Explained, we're going to find out. Since their return to the Premier League in 2020, Leeds have been famed for their leaky defence. Even when they finished 9th in 2021, they conceded more goals than relegated Fulham. Last year, only bottom-placed Norwich let in more than them, and as this is written, their 74 conceded this term is the worst record in the division. This was previously a byproduct of the hyper-attacking style Bielsa instilled at Elland Road, and as a result, any shortcomings at the back were made up for by a ton of goals at the other end, finishing the 2021 campaign having scored more than both Chelsea and Arsenal. But the goals have since dried up. Whereas they once scored 1.6 goals a game, they now score just 1.3, and the club's failure to rebuild the attack is at the heart of this. It's not for lack of trying. Rafinha looked ready for a Champions League club pretty soon after signing from Rennes in 2020, while Patrick Bamford's fitness problems called for a new centre-forward to be identified, and in both cases sporting director Victor Orta was proactive in entering the market. Since the summer of 2021, Dan James, Brendan Aronson, Luis Sinisterra, Wilfried Gnonto and Jorginho Rutter have all been signed for just under €120 million combined. The problem is that none of these signings, aside from Gnonto, who happened to be by far the cheapest purchase, have had their desired effect. Dan James was loaned to Fulham after just 1 year, unable to provide a consistent scoring threat despite being a long-time target of the club. Sinisterra arrived with a lot of hype but has struggled with fitness, forced off injured in 4 separate games this term, and racking up just 875 minutes of Premier League action. Aronson, meanwhile, started the season impressively but has registered just 1 goal involvement since November, with a Leeds staff member recently telling The Athletic that the 22-year-old has struggled with the emotional toil of battling relegation. And finally, Rutter, signed during the latest January window for a fee that could rise to a club record £35 million, has made just 1 start, has sat on the bench for the entirety of the last 6 games at the time of recording, and is yet to register a goal or an assist. Perhaps more than any other signing, Rutter represents how Leeds have lost their way since 2021. A very promising young striker who scored 8 goals for Hoffenheim in 21-22 and averaged 0.62 expected goals and assists per 90, highly impressive for someone who was just 19 for the majority of that campaign. Rutter dropped off at the start of 22-23, hitting just 2 goals in 15 Bundesliga games and seeing his expected goals and assists per 90 fall to 0.48. That's not to say he won't come back into form at some point, he's still only 21 after all, but in hindsight, spending big on a young, out-of-form striker who was moving to England for the first time was risky for a side embroiled in a relegation dogfight and in desperate need of goals. It came after they had missed out on Charles de Ketelaere to Milan and Cody Gakpo to Liverpool, and in a month in which Dango Ouattara, Kamaldeen Sulemana, Danny Ings and Mateus Cunha all signed for direct rivals. While Victor Orta continued the trend of data-led recruitment focusing on young talent with resale value which had served the club well in the past, it has not helped their hopes of Premier League survival in the short term. And despite their long-standing issues at the back, they have only signed 2 defenders since the summer of 2021, Rasmus Christensen last year and Max Verber in the winter window. Since January deadline day, Leeds have averaged just 0.7 points per game. Only Southampton have fared worse. And Leeds' lack of success with signings reflects difficulties behind the scenes. In November 2021, it was announced that 49ers Enterprises, the investment arm of NFL franchise San Francisco 49ers, had increased their stake in the club to 44%, and they possess an option to buy out owner Radrizzani by January 2024. If Leeds stay up, they are reportedly aiming to become owners by this July. With such a big change pending at the club, transfer activity has become more complicated. Whereas previously the final decision on transfers ultimately hinged on an agreement between Radrizzani and sporting director Orta, the fact that 49ers Enterprises will be liable to cover the future cost of amortization for any transfers completed now if they complete their takeover has added an extra dynamic to this process. According to The Athletic, the club decided to sign Rutter on a permanent basis rather than a loan with an option to buy after the 49ers made clear they were willing to back such a move. Jack Harrison's £22 million deadline day move to Leicester, meanwhile, was blocked at the last minute after the 49ers backed Orta, who wanted to keep hold of the English winger, over Radrizzani, who wanted to cash in on him. While the club have denied that these kinds of situations have become common, it certainly suggests that the club's decision-making process takes longer than before. And their league position this season has been affected greatly by indecision at the top. Radrizzani first considered sacking head coach Jesse Marsch in October, following a run of 6 losses in 8 games that had seen the fans turn on the former Salzburg coach. But he was reportedly talked out of it, presumably by Orta, who was always a big backer of the American, and the owner even delivered a training ground speech backing Marsch that was followed by a famous win over Liverpool at Anfield. But the side floundered once again after the World Cup, and Radrizzani once again came close to sacking him after a 2-1 defeat to Aston Villa. Orta was again determined to stick by him, but he could only delay the decision until the beginning of February, by which point Leeds were only out of the relegation zone on goal difference and had spent January signing 3 new players for Marsch. And it wasn't long before Orta followed him, eventually leaving his post as sporting director after 6 years in the job following the sacking of Marsch's replacement Javi Gracia, and the decision by the club to hire Sam Allardyce, who will earn £500,000 for taking charge of 4 games, is evidence enough of the former Middlesbrough director's departure. While Allardyce is a well-respected coach who was at the technical forefront of the management game for many years, the style of football he is famous for could not be further from what Orta established at the club with the appointment of Bielsa and attempted to sustain with the hiring of Marsch. Having been slow to address the team's slump under Marsch, Leeds have paid the price, forced into a desperate late-season appointment totally at odds with the young squad at Elland Road and the football they had been playing for years. But what does the future hold for Leeds United? Well, much depends on whether they are a Premier League club next season. If they are, then it's expected they will be under new ownership, with Andrea Radrizzani selling up to the 49ers. And in theory, this would be good news. Radrizzani has previously suggested the club needs more resources than it currently has to become a properly established Premier League club. And given the San Francisco 49ers are valued at $5.2 billion according to Forbes, they would be in pretty safe hands in this regard. Increasing Elland Road's capacity to 60,000 would be high on the agenda too. But if they go down, it's less certain what happens next. The value of the deal that would see Radrizzani sell his 56% stake to the 49ers is estimated at £500 million by The Athletic, and it's understood this option to buy would not be reduced if they find themselves in the Championship. While the club's prospective new owners have not ruled out pressing ahead with the buyout even if they go down, a recent report by the Daily Mail's Matt Hughes suggests that they would offer just £150 million for Radrizzani's stake if this were to happen. So there is a chance that Radrizzani stays on and attempts to get Leeds back into the Prem. Luckily for him, every squad member would see their wages reduced by at least 50% due to a clause in each of their contracts, while the fact they have recruited young means they have a number of very sellable assets if they need to raise further funds. It would be a far from ideal situation though, and one that would set the club back by at least 2 years, even if they did manage to bounce back up from the increasingly competitive Championship. If they are relegated, then it will feel like a missed opportunity for a club that looked destined to challenge for European football after their superb return season of 2020-21. Having waited 16 long years to get back into the Prem, dropping back out after 3 may only add to the instability that has plagued the club since Bielsa left. So that was our explained on how Leeds fell apart. What have you made of their decline over the last year? And do you think they can bounce back up to the Prem at the first time of asking if they are relegated? Let us know in the comments below. And with transfer season just around the corner, are there any transfer related explains you'd like to see us cover? Let us know down there too. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like and subscribe to Football Daily if you're new here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.